Hello, everybody. This is Paul Benson with Synapse. I am joined here today with Andrew Wheeler, CEO of Skyword. Andrew, how's it going?
Good, Paul. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Andrew, before we dive in, just for folks who don't know, aren't familiar with Skyword, you mind just giving them a quick overview of the company?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Paul. So Andrew Wheeler, I'm the CEO here at Skyword. Skyword is a content marketing platform based here in Boston, Massachusetts. We are focused on making high quality content creation easy for marketers. We offer a content creation technology, an expansive creator network, managed services, all to help brands communicate more effectively with their audience across the entire digital experience.
Awesome. So yeah, obviously we're going to get a lot into content today because to introduce the topic, guys, we're talking maximizing your marketing budgets for 2023. As well as what are the biggest trends among paid and earned media. So when we get into the earned media side, we'll be talking a lot more about content. So also for those that don't know, Andrew and I go way back. We worked together 2005-ish at iProspect. Andrew was my manager and mentor. And I will say everything that I've learned on search, I'm self-taught. I'm pretty much self-taught. But Andrew, no, I'm just kidding. I learned a lot from Andrew over the years, and definitely appreciate you taking the time. And let's dive in. We're going to talk about a couple topics within the whole budgeting for 2023, but I know that a lot of marketers are trying to figure out exactly how to budget with some specific tailwinds, perspective tailwinds for 2023, as well as some headwinds. So we'll talk about that. I think first and foremost, people are, this impending recession is top of mind for most folks. I think the market hit like a 2-year low last month. I think we all know inflation was relatively high, around 9% in 2022. So these factors are making people a little bit more cautious going into 2023, especially when it comes to budgeting. But I think there's definitely some good news. So in terms of the market, obviously things have been turning around a little bit. Inflation has gotten better. So that is obviously important. But I think more importantly, one thing that I kind of looked at, I don't know, Andrew, if you ever thought about this, but I think about this from like my personal finance perspective of like, what happens in a bear market? What happens in a recession? And how long does it take for things to get back to normal? So I was looking that up a little bit, and I think it's interesting and relevant when we're thinking about, budget planning for marketers. But in a bear market, it typically lasts about 6 months. I thought that was interesting. And then if you're going into, or if it's an actual recession, that down market will usually last under 15 months. So I think like one of the major takeaways is as we're going into 2023, and I think a lot of companies are rethinking this way, a down market is almost always a very short-term thing, usually under 6 months. So just kind of wanted to call that out as we jump into it. So I think from a mentality perspective over budgeting, we're kind of less focused on necessarily cutting budgets. And I think a lot of the folks that we've spoken to, and we'll share some data as we go through this, a lot of marketers are thinking about it more from how are we more efficient with our budgets? How can we get more out of our budgets? So Andrew, quick question for you as we get into this a little bit. Any just like thoughts or perspective or data points about how marketers are thinking about budget planning for 2023?
Yeah. Before I get into that too, like even the comment that you made about the bear market or this idea of being under 15 months if there's a recession, I think it's really hard, right? Because circumstances are always different. So circumstances the last time or that last data point may be different than today, coupled with pandemic, coupled with politics, coupled with, right? There's so much going on in the world. So I would take it with a grain of salt that it's not exactly as it was the last time it happened. And I think I'm pointing that out because I think that plagues a lot of marketers that are trying to plan budgets, right? So 2020 was, in my opinion, a nightmare relative to what we were seeing and folks pulling back, and then feeling like they pulled back too much and didn't get serious enough where 21, they released budgets and started, resuming spending. 2022 kicked off. And again, you saw that very conservative approach. I think with respect to 2023 overall, it's feeling like people are not cutting budgets. I won't be able to tout stats exactly. So you might have to help me out, Paul, because I know we both looked at the same Forrester report.
Yep.
But according to one of their more recent reports in terms of 2023 planning, there was a reference to, I don't think it was like 85, 90% of businesses expecting to actually increase their investments or at a minimum stay flat.
Yep.
And specifically in the tech space, which has been more impacted than others, over 75% expect their budgets to increase.
Yeah.
Like I was saying to you earlier, it's interesting, right? Because in some cases, investments are to truly invest more and to do more in particular areas, be it digital experience or privacy, CRM, content, which is part of all these things. In some cases, folks are having to increase budgets just to offset the increase in cost that they're faced with, right?
Yep.
Agency partners are charging more to offset the fact that it's costing them more to retain talent and hire talent.
Yep.
Technology or even product partners that are putting forth 5 to 10% cost increases.
Yep.
So in some cases, just to be able to get the same, you're having to spend more.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, sorry, Andrew, cut you off. But I think, the report you're referencing, the Forrester report, for folks who are interested, it's the 2023 Planning Isn't Business as Usual Forrester report, just taking a look at how businesses planning to invest in 2023. And as Andrew mentioned, 90% of the businesses surveyed expect to increase investments or stay the same in 2023. So I think that's just an indication of how marketers and businesses are thinking about 2023, not as this, oh no, we're heading into a 2020 again, the Q1, Q2 of 2020. It's more about, let's just be conservative and let's try to be more efficient, I think is the primary sort of thought process right now.
Yeah, I really don't think this is like 2020, right? I think, this unprecedented, what is this thing that's happening? Instead, it really feels like, to your point a few minutes ago, folks are planning for the bear market and call it a recession or potential recession, where consumer spending might fall, but business investments are expected to be very strong and in some cases increasing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think one of the other reports we looked at was actually an article from Forrester that was talking about 95% of B2C companies plan to invest more heavily in marketing specifically in 2023. So just another good stat. And I think it was 52% plan to significantly invest in marketing. So it's just good to get those stats, right? Just to understand, I think from our perspective as an agency, from a Skyword perspective, like what is the expectation for 2023? And I think a lot of marketing leaders are having that same question in their mind. So I think the data right now, how the market is trending, what some of these reports are telling us is that businesses definitely plan to continue to invest heavily. And of course, there's going to be exceptions to that. You mentioned tech has been hit harder. I know we both work quite a bit with in the B2B space. And I think there's probably a little bit more caution in that particular industry. But just based on conversations we've had with clients, I think the expectation is still to invest in 2023 and continue to push. So,
yeah.
Cool. So I guess when we get into just talking a little bit more about that methodology, that tendency to see a potential recession or bear market, and any advice, thought process, methodology that you would want to recommend or share with a client or a marketing leader?
I think good question. I think with times like these, or people having gone through what they just went through the past 2 years, there's often this knee-jerk reaction to just slash or freeze spending in particular areas, rather than what we say here at Skyword, making very surgical changes to, outdated cost centers and structures, right? Mm-hmm. We feel it the most because content marketing can always feel like easy prey. Yeah. Especially in organizations where executives are way less versed in content strategy or on the influence of content on consumer behavior. But, right now, the content experience is that customer experience. And so it's so important not to just go cut, but rather, spend the time asking the questions instead of, oh, this is the biggest cost center. Start there. It is, how does this area or this initiative connect to the customer value delivery, right? what are the downstream implications of defunding this particular area or this initiative?
Yeah.
Right. What are the competitive risks involved? If I stop doing this, what's happening over here?
Yep.
And I think applying that across digital marketing, whether I'm talking specifically within content or you expand it beyond, can help explain how drastically reducing something could actually cripple parts of your marketing engine.
Yeah.
In some cases, and you and I know it well from our sort of core skills.
Yep.
Especially in areas like SEO, it's not a matter of turning it off and turning it on.
Yeah.
We know that turning it off and turning it back on, you're set back some multiplier. So you have to consider these things when making cuts, and don't be short-sighted.
Yeah. And I think
Would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I guess like another way to put it also is, if you're going to save money now, what's the longer term effect, right? And we talked about the reason I brought up earlier, the kind of like what happens in a bear market from a timeline perspective, although to your point, it's always variable, is if you're going to cut money to save over the next 12 months and it's going to affect you for the following year, and you're going to be in the same exact situation with certain KPIs, goals that you need to hit, and now there's been a year kind of missed in terms of trying to gain a competitive advantage, trying to help drive more organic traffic, earn media at a lower cost. And so it will catch up. And so we understand sometimes it's an impossible thing where you do have to make budget cuts. And that stuff happens, whether it's a bear market or not. It could be business specific dynamics, but it's just making sure those budgets are cut in the safest places possible. And I think some of those areas are like organic, or SEO, for example, is, as you said, like a place where typically
it comes back to just don't be short-sighted, right? Think through it, think through all the implications, right? On a completely different note, you even see it with wage inflation.
Yeah.
So you and I both have different sized teams, but we employ people, right? And in many cases, they are earning, deserving, demanding higher wages, and we can't keep up necessarily with inflation. So what are you going to do? Can you afford to lose the employee?
Yeah.
Can you afford to lose the employee at their current salary just to have to replace them with months of recruitment, months of onboarding, and needing to go pay a rate commensurate with today's wages?
Yeah.
You're better off not being short-sighted and investing in those people and doing what you can to meet those needs, saving money in the long run.
Yeah.
Same thing is applied the way that we were just talking relative to content or digital marketing. You got to think through the full impact.
Yeah. It's interesting. We were talking about this a little bit offline too, Andrew, but I know that just from conversations with clients that there's some increased trust built in because they know we're here for the duration because we're a business partner, right? We're an agency partner, versus the employee market. There's always a chance for turnover and people leaving for other opportunities, but it's been so magnified or amplified over the last, 18 months that I think, some of our agency partners are trusting us with additional services, additional channels to manage because the challenge bringing in talent and the fear that when they do bring in that talent, they might leave 6 or 12 months later. So it's interesting.
You're completely right. Not that I like to capitalize on other people's pain, but it does feel good to be able to help out longtime partners, friends.
Yeah.
We have an example where a Fortune 500 enterprise had major layoffs, and on top of that had somebody in a key role resign, and they were actually going to pause all their content creation because they just couldn't keep up. They didn't have the reviewers, they didn't have the folks to publish, and they actually came to us and asked us if we could help fill the gap and if we could help. And we actually found a way where we could take on more of the review and some of the direct publishing where they didn't have to pause. We were able to help them out. And, I think in the end, they're going to feel good that they had a partner that actually got a better understanding of their inner workings. Do we get to do that all the time? No. But I think in some cases, to your point, where agencies and partners can take on more, is helping brands understand, just how valuable a partner they are.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it makes sense. Talking about, if we dive a little bit more deeply, because we started talking about budgets and just marketing budgets overall, and we said at the top of this that we're going to be talking about earned media, paid media dynamics. To start talking a little bit about earned media specifically and content within that, have you, I guess, seen any recent trends on the content marketing side in terms of how businesses are thinking about it, or any just general thoughts on going into 2023, how marketers and marketing leaders should think about what percent of their marketing budgets, how much of their marketing budget should go towards like a content strategy or content marketing plan?
So I can take this one of two ways. I can either say you need to budget 100% for content, which of course I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Or talk about the fact that, there's no one answer here, right? I mean, I don't have a magic percentage. I think if you look at some of the research that's been done and put out either by analysts or articles, one that you and I both read recently coming out of Forbes, relative to how much should you budget for content marketing. Some of these say anywhere between 20, 25 to 30%.
Yeah.
But honestly, Paul, it completely depends on what is your brand looking to do in the time ahead, in the year ahead, in the 18 months ahead.
Yeah.
And are you focused on raising awareness? Are you focused on driving conversion? In some cases, we work with brands that are going through massive relaunch of their brand or launching new products, where that percentage spikes.
Yeah.
And we see 30% turn into 40, 45%.
Yeah.
Because as you can imagine, specifically with content, it touches everything.
Yeah.
So if they're increasing paid media over here, well, guess what? You need something to drive the paid media too. Yeah. So it really is commensurate with other areas where you're increasing investment. But yeah, if you're launching or have new campaigns or new initiatives, that percentage may increase. I think more broadly speaking, I think the Forbes article talks generically around the 25 or 30%.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'd be interesting to look at, if we took like took our clients, for example, and just looked at that. I know it varies wildly. And I think one of the metrics we've looked at, because we think about content very much through the view of SEO. And so in the past, especially if it's a less mature business, one of the things we'll look at is like what percent of traffic and revenue is coming from organic. And if it's relatively skewed unfavorably. So for example, we had one client where they had 5% of their revenue was being generated by SEO. And the typical norm that we see is usually around 15 to 30, up to 40 or 50% even. So we knew that there was just a huge gap. And then of course you take that, you start looking at rankings and start looking into the more, important metrics on SEO. And you realize, okay, there's definitely opportunity and their percent allocation to content strategy was way too low. So I think that's one way to kind of look at it. I'd also say as just sort of a more anecdotal data point, one of our fastest growing channels right now is definitely SEO. It was really interesting because back in the day, SEO was the key driver and then paid search kind of came along, and paid search, obviously a lot of investments were shifted over to paid search. And we're kind of seeing I don't want to say that shifting back, but a little bit of a correction because paid search is so tangible and measurable, and SEO requires so much from a resource perspective in terms of content development that I think a lot of companies shy away from it and it's harder to prove it out. But we're definitely seeing, I would say, our fastest growing channel by far right now heading into, or basically partially through Q4 and heading into Q1 is SEO. So it's just kind of interesting to see that. I know we were also looking at a separate Forbes thing that was talking about a survey that was done by CMA and marketing profs that talked about, roughly a little bit more than a quarter of companies were shifting paid dollars into content. And I can just say we're definitely seeing that on our side as well.
Yeah, I mean, the trends have been interesting to follow. I mean, so Skyword's been around for 10 to 12 years, but we were built on SEO. We were truly built on SEO. The company was built as a way for marketers to create content in an effort to win in SEO. We've come a long way from working with a P&G brand handing us a list of keywords, or the SEO agency handing us a list of keywords to create content around. But SEO has never gone away. It's a big part of our offering relative to any asset that's created with Skyword is optimized for search before it is returned to the customer.
Yeah.
I don't think SEO is going away anytime soon. I think the problem that's always been connected to SEO is still the same. And that is, it takes time.
Yep.
And it takes a really well concerted effort, right? In terms of optimizing the broader website, right? Putting great, well optimized content on a site that, right? A lot of, I'm sure the folks that are listening to the podcast already know that if they're connected to you in any way. So Yeah, I think it's important. And I think along that line of how Skyward's evolved and relative to SEO, you said something a few minutes ago. You said it probably and didn't realize you were saying it, but you talked about content strategy, right? I think that's so key, Paul, especially as we talked about what percentage of the budget should go towards content marketing. I think more and more marketers are shifting attention and dollars towards making sure they have the right strategy and approach in place first versus creating one-off disconnected assets.
Yeah.
It's really important.
In terms of the content that you guys are developing at Skyword, what would you say is the general mix in terms of more one-off tactical pieces of content versus content that is part of a larger sort of content strategy that's being used outside of SEO?
So I'm going to answer you the way you asked the question relative to what we're doing at Skyward, but keep in mind, I don't think it is representative of what marketers are doing.
Yeah.
Right. And that is if a brand is working with Skyward and they're paying us to advise them, and they understand the importance of content and we're educating them on content strategy first. I mean, Paul, you're talking upwards of 90% plus that are doing it with purpose and with some sort of orchestration through the organization or at least from sales and marketing. I don't know if that, I don't think the average marketer is thinking like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do make a point to spend probably too much time at sort of the onset coming up with a plan. And even providing tools and ways for the stakeholders we're working with to go and share that back through parts of the organization to get buy-in early so that things don't become one-off or disconnected.
Yeah, we've been writing. The reason I'm asking too is because we've been writing for, our content is always for SEO historically. Yeah. And then we started getting these questions around or feedback from clients. Hey guys, I'm using this content here also. It's being rolled up as part of our newsletter, or it's going out as part of another email blast or whatever the case might be. So we've had to start rethinking like how we think about topic development and the overall SEO strategy. We've kind of broadened our scope or purview when it comes to just thinking through content at Synapse, which is interesting because we're so SEO centric when it comes to content. We think about it pretty narrowly, but even that's expanded.
And there's some wonderful tools. I'm sure you guys use it at Synapse. We probably even use some of the very same tools that can help you balance sort of the need to stay on content strategy, on brand, voice, tone needs, but also balance the search inputs, what the keyword opportunities look like, and like striking that balance. And instead of leading with SEO, leading with what does the brand need, what supports the brand, but then optimizing for SEO. There's some wonderful tools out there.
Another question we're getting a lot is around video. And because it just correlates so closely or so sort of interwoven with regular content, it's like regular content, video content. What have you seen just in general, both maybe at Skyword and in general, just in terms of like the popularity of video? You got the TikToks out there, but you also see like how-to videos and a lot of other
TikToks. What's that?
It's this new thing. I'll send you a link later.
It'll catch on.
We'll see. But just so there's obviously like normal like B2C uses of video, but there's also, like I said, the how-tos, and it's being used in clever ways to drive better engagement. What have you seen?
Exactly that. Over the years, a shift where more content marketing dollars, more content dollars are being allocated towards video. So again, like we started on the foundation of SEO and on the written word, and have shifted quite a bit. Like I said, SEO is still key, but there's a good percentage that is now video oriented, whether it's animated video, live action video. I mean, people are shifting away from the talking heads. No pun intended, given what folks in this podcast are seeing right now. Or even there's a lot of interactive content, which is not the same as video, but again, it's all around that driving engagement. So platforms like Ceros, if you've heard of it, where it really allows you to take content and make it more interactive, force folks through an experience. Similarly, we're seeing that with video. Even with old school things that like a case study, like people bringing that to life with video versus this page after page bedtime novella.
Nice. Well, let me ask you this then. Why don't you think companies, and maybe it's a leading, I guess when I say why don't, it's kind of a leading question, but why don't you think companies are investing more in content strategy, including video? Why aren't they more invested in those areas? And I would say video in particular.
I don't even have to, I mean, video in particular, I think content in general, earned media in general, I think brands struggle to be able to report on the ROI.
Yep.
Think about it. Again, you have experience in both paid media as well as earned. Paid media, it's very, very simple. There's tracking in place. You put $1 in, you know what the dollars are that you get out. Organic's very hard. Content's very hard. Video's very hard. Attribution gets in the way. You know, who saw it, where they see it, did that impact? And I really think that is a bottleneck for where folks don't make larger investments. And I think going back 10 minutes when we were talking about don't just go after cutting, budgets, think through it. That's why content's easy prey.
Yeah.
And not a lot of folks have figured it out. And even if we went and put all of our efforts into it, we're still only as good as the brands we work with and their willingness to share data or their willingness to use tracking or their willingness to set it up the right way. We've worked with so many brands that even have barriers within their own organization where the folks we're working with don't have that exposure.
Yeah.
So Paul, it's plagued us for a long time. It continues to plague us, but I would say that's the number one reason why.
Yeah, I think it's plagued everybody, including the businesses, right? I mean, I think like Synapse as a company could benefit from better utilizing video assets to help market ourselves, which is a big focus for us for 2023 is to become more visible. That's why we're doing the podcast, and I think it's a shortcoming of a lot of companies. Video is expensive to develop. You got to put a strategy around it. You got to know how to use it. I think it's a to your point. Yeah.
You nailed it, right? It's expensive and you can't just sit down and create a video.
Yeah.
Right. It requires the right training. But I will say there are very creative solutions that are out there. We offer some of them. I'm sure we barely scratched the surface that allow you to take different approaches to video. And it can be very, very effective. Yeah.
Yeah. We're just we're kind of in that boat too. Like internally, we don't do video, but we have some design partners that do because it seemed like such an emerging need among our clients. So it's definitely something we're going to be focused on for 2023. So I guess like in going down the path of attribution a little bit and just trying to prove out that marketing channels work, what are your thoughts just in terms of branding? Branding overall as a business, is it important? And should businesses, and I'll preface this with like, should small and medium or non-enterprise companies be invested in branding their business versus focusing on lead gen programs?
I mean, it's very hard to have effective programs, campaigns, initiatives if the branding has been sort of left behind.
Yeah.
I think, right?
Yep.
So, striking that balance, especially depending on what you're looking to accomplish and depending what your brand is known for, has done, and has been successful in building, you need some aspect of branding. I'm a little bit biased, Paul. A lot of the brands that we work with are enterprise Fortune 500.
Yeah.
So we don't often get this question. We don't get into this because typically branding is a non-issue.
Yeah.
But I would say put that aside for a second, whether it's mid-market or even SMB. I think it's really hard to be successful with other efforts if there isn't some aspect of branding that's been done or in place.
Yeah.
And I think you have to recognize it for that and not expect to drive the results through branding and then put the right metrics in place as you move into lead generation and further conversion like efforts.
Yeah. It's interesting because to be able to show that a branding initiative worked, and for example, a billboard, you have to be such a large company with complex marketing models to be able to evaluate that. And so it kind of leaves a lot of the small and medium companies, the non-enterprise sized businesses, they don't have the data. There's so much noise in their data because of the volume of data that they're getting to be able to really evaluate those types of programs. I don't even mean billboards specifically, but even indirect benefits of paid search, content, blog articles. It is extremely difficult to quantify the benefit of that. Anecdotally, I don't know if you remember this, but in our iProspect days, and I honestly don't remember how involved you were, there was a question as to why two of our brands, I think at the time it was Staples and Quill, they were selling the same products, why one was generating significantly better click-through rates. And we did this whole true A/B test across the two brands, and Staples just significantly outperformed. And the very obvious conclusion was people know who Staples is, right, and that's why they were driving better click-through rates. So I think what could be an opportunity is thinking about other performance marketing metrics that branding helps drive, which are click-through rates, conversion rates, success in the sales process, including, sales cycles, sales velocity, just ability to sell, success rates, are all factors that come into play. So I think what we've seen a shift on industry-wide has been more, if we're doing LinkedIn, we're not doing LinkedIn as much to drive leads anymore, although there's definitely part of it. It's more about building trust and awareness with the customer, which is not a new concept, but I think, again, it's building up steam because people are saying we just philosophically believe in it, even if we can't prove it, and we're going to have some budget to support those types of initiatives.
I mean, it makes sense. And that's what I remember too from the Staples Quill exercise, by the way. I mean, there's a lot that goes behind a stronger brand.
Yeah. All right. So I guess in terms of moving forward, I mean, are there any major shifts that you guys are kind of focused on for 2023 when it comes to just what you think might change in the industry, or anything about how you guys might want to focus your services in 2023? Anything that's top of mind for you?
This is my audience alert. This is not meant to be a shameless plug, but I would also be terrible at my job, and we would be terrible as a solutions provider if we weren't putting things in market that didn't real time help marketers do something better. So that's my caveat. But yeah, Paul, we just recently launched a product. We're calling it content atomization. But in a nutshell, Paul, it's really about getting more with less. And it's really about the fact that so many brands invest time and money in, say, content, and need versions of it for different audiences, right? So you and I reading an article as CEOs of small organizations versus the CTO of a major Fortune 500 company. Yep. The core information is the core information, but the personalization differs. And so we've introduced AI, and this is where my answer is for you, right? I think looking for solutions as a marketer, looking for solutions that are starting to tap into AI, and NLP to find ways to be more efficient with dollars. Instead of you saying, I need 10 articles all around this topic, but one is for the CEO and one is for the CMO, we can say, here's the core asset. Let's leverage AI to create versions. And I'm giving you 3x what I would give you to get one article, but I'm not giving you 10x to get 10 articles, right? So there's a cost savings in there that helps the dollar go further, but you're also personalizing. And we know personalization comes a long way in terms of resonating with that audience. So it's a big area I would suggest folks look at.
It wasn't top of mind for me, but it's come up a little bit internally. I don't remember the specific platform, but there's been a lot of clients asking us about AI within content development. Just kind of curious your perspective about how far you can take it in terms of using it for social media posts, using it for writing content, and how much human interaction or management of that content is needed.
It's a super, I'll say, controversial / very multi-opinionated topic. So I'll tell you, I think a lot of folks are super, super confused. A lot of folks are super against bringing in any aspect of AI. And then, I think we take a very conservative yet smart approach. So I'm in the camp that no time now or in the near term will AI go replace a writer, or even fully replace an editor. But I think there's a huge place for AI and NLP in terms of setting the stage or creating a baseline or playing a role. So for us, even within the atomization product, it's leveraging something that was written by a human and then creating a version off of that based off of the algorithm that we've trained through content, right? Yep. Through other articles and other content that's been created. So there's a role where it is just creating the versions, but we still then put that version through the lens of an editor, right? We don't just rely on the AI.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it and folks have seen fully written articles coming out of AI. They're getting better, for sure. Yeah. But there's no way that you would ever say to yourself that was written by a person. Yeah. So my opinion in short is like there is a place for it. Yeah. We are far, at least right now, from it fully replacing writers or editors.
Yeah. And the angle we're thinking about that is the SEO angle, right? And the algo updates, Google's push, especially recently in this year, has been natural content written for the user, not content written for SEO. So I think if someone were thinking about it through that lens, they'd say, AI, there's no way I'm going to use AI. That's like the exact opposite of what Google wants us to be producing. But at the same time, Andrew, like you're saying, it's about how you're using it. And are you still coming up with interesting topics, good hooks, good angles, original thoughts? That's different,
even if you're not using it for the creation, Paul, there's a huge role for it around it. Yeah. Right? In the prep, right?
Ideation, right?
Ideation to brief creation, right? Like even if you do all that, but you still involve the writer, the editor, you've created a much more efficient process. You've saved the writer time. They have a starting point. You've saved the editor, right? So even layering that in can reduce costs, can increase throughput. So there's definitely a role, and obviously it'll change a lot over the next couple of years. You're seeing a ton of innovation come out of folks like Jasper, and Grammarly has done, I think, incredible things for the writers and editors of the world.
Yeah, I think Jasper is the one I was thinking about, Andrew, that I couldn't remember the name of. So yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But I think, if you said, hey, what's one thing that could happen that would make content marketing, content strategy, and SEO a bigger part of a business's focus, it's cost savings, right? Because we just talked earlier about how content and video development is extremely expensive, right? So if you can reduce costs through some automation, I think that's very enticing to companies and our clients. So
if I could add one thing to that, you're spot on. I totally agree with that. I would also add, especially in a world where advertising is falling further and further and further away from effectiveness, right? How much do you pay? I bet you don't know the answer in any given month to Hulu and to Netflix and to Amazon and to YouTube. You go calculate how much you're spending, right? And all that is to be able to consume content on your time without interruption.
Yep.
So now bring that into the marketer's world. Creating content, it's an opportunity to engage an audience with actual information that they're interested in, where they are asking for more of it, right? They're consuming it. It is not disruptive. They're seeking it out.
Yeah.
If you can do that effectively, you win.
Yep. I think video will continue to be a part of that, right? Like shorter.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Engaging video to support the content or the topic. Yeah. Okay. I think that makes sense. I think one of the other items that we were going to talk a little bit about, and I think we've kind of covered it, but kind of curious to get your perspective on it, is just channel measurement of performance by channel. We sort of talked about how it's hard to measure these things. We tend to think about paid search as a lead gen channel or a direct response channel. We tend to think about SEO as sort of a hybrid channel where it's some of it is direct response and driving leads or whatever the KPI is, and some of it is just helping with brand building and thought leadership. And we think about social media, especially organic, as completely brand building and thought leadership. Do you agree with that? Any difference of opinion on kind of how you would think about treating these different channels from a KPI and goal perspective?
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think that, I don't know, it's important to start shifting away from just thinking about channel. Like even one thing that comes to mind, I was talking to somebody recently about influencer, right? And they think about like influencer marketing as a channel.
Yeah.
Influencer marketing isn't necessarily a channel, right? Like what is that influencer doing? You got to think about an influencer as a creator, and get into sort of them as into the creator ecosystem. They bring in voices that help desired values and insights come to life in meaningful ways for an audience. And they bring cool content and their audience. They also send a signal to the market that what the brand stands for, based off of whoever they're partnering with. So larger brand creator vision, make that come to life at scale across the enterprise and across channels, not as a channel.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there needs to be this bigger thinking rather than siloed channels, but rather how these things can work their way across channels to drive overall effectiveness is really important on a go forward.
I mean, I agree, but it's especially interesting because that's the exact conversation we've been having around video, right? The idea is like, hey guys, let's go create this video. It's like, why are we creating it? And then how are we going to leverage it across channels? So we're starting the conversation with clients much more about thinking about it more holistically, right? Video is an asset. That asset is part of a larger strategy of other assets. And then I think most importantly, because we talked about how expensive it is to produce something like video, where do you utilize it? Where can you actually get value from that video once it's produced? So kind of similar to influencer and how you're thinking about leveraging that. I think video is the exact same thing. You can't just, the idea of creating a video and putting it out on a single channel, right? I think misses the point.
Absolutely. I think people these days are thinking video and social.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm creating video for social, and that's where video has a chance to be effective. And I think it's short-sighted.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can drive engagement on the website. You can push it through your existing customer base, prospect lists, et cetera. So yeah, I think, and especially if you're going to pay a lot of money for the video, which is generally inherently the case, and that even forces you to get more value out of it, right?
And even think about video beyond just external.
Yeah.
Right. So something we haven't talked about is even thinking about video from an internal sales enablement perspective.
Yeah.
I've seen more and more brands looking to video and shifting to video within internal content hubs that help keep the sales team informed and give them tools, assets they can use to go and speak to their prospective customers.
Yeah.
Right?
So not a marketing tool, a training and enablement tool.
And then just go back to what I said a few minutes ago with atomization. The video assets created, you can leverage 80% of it as the same, but now you need to personalize it for a different audience, right?
Yeah.
You can take that core asset and start to customize it, but you're not paying 10x for 10x the content, you're paying 3x.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. No, it makes sense. Okay. Well, Andrew, we're coming to the tail end of this thing. And one of the final segments we had was dirt on Andrew. So I'm going to tell some, no, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
We don't have enough time.
The problem is you could retaliate. So we're going to avoid that topic altogether.
I even have pictures at the ready.
I'm sure you do, unfortunately. But I think just, I guess, to conclude, and Andrew, any other thoughts, feel free to chime in. But I think just kind of putting a bow on this, when thinking about budgeting for 2023, I think a lot of folks are looking at it with confidence and optimism, despite some of the market dynamics, from some of the data that we have, some of our own client information, that the budgets that we've seen are increased budgets, more aggressive budgets with aggressive goals to continue to grow. So I think that's number one. And a lot of questions around, hey guys, what can we do more effectively or efficiently? Not just for earned media, but for all media, earned and paid. So we're doing a lot of analyses and a lot of brainstorming sessions with clients, talking through how can we make our paid search program more efficient, more effective? And there's a lot of ways we can do that. How can we make our SEO program more effective? What could we be doing on social? So that's kind of the heart of the conversations. And I think, again, there's a lot of optimism going into 2023. And, we know sometimes folks are forced to pull back budgets because there's some mandate to do so. And we understand that. And I think that just thinking through the process and where it's going to be most cost effective moving forward, and not burn you a year later in terms of where those budgets are being cut. So general thoughts, Andrew, any other parting words?
probably a little too content oriented, but I'll say it anyways, right? I think if you find yourself needing to justify or defend why your brand should continue to invest in content, I think a few things, 3 things to keep in mind, right? Make sure that you're highlighting the ways your content is intrinsic to your customer experience, right? It's an audience journey priority, and it needs to remain a business priority. Demonstrate how your content feeds your pipeline and reinforces other channels and initiatives. You shut off the tap, there's going to be a domino effect. And third, create a shared vision around how you need to adapt content to help customers navigate, right? Today is different than yesterday, than a year ago, than 2 years ago, right? You need to help them navigate and sort of highlight what innovation areas you need to seed for tomorrow. And if you lack the means to do that, consider using external partners to achieve more.
Yep. Makes sense. Well, first of all, thanks again for joining. Always great to see you. We'll hang out. When's the last time we saw each other in person?
I prefer Zoom, Paul.
It's weird to have dinner together over Zoom, but hey, I'm game. But yeah, we should hang. But hey, thanks again. For folks at home or work listening, Andrew, if they are interested in learning more about Skyword services, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Easiest way is Andrew at Skyword. Andrew at skyword.com.
Okay.
Feel free to drop me a note. Would love to hear from you.
Appreciate it. Andrew, thank you, sir. I'll catch you later on.
Sounds good.
See you guys. Bye, all.